Alright, so this thing, if you look, it's got a pretty serious line on it right here in the center, going all the way around. It doesn't look real good. Next one, same situation, a whole lot of lines wrapping around it, and so forth and so on, right down the crank. That one looks really bad. What you really want to avoid finding is a situation like this where you can actually feel it. That's a pretty bad one, I can feel it. And that's on the mains, and the mains are already 20 under on this. Now the reason I say under, you'll hear people say, oh, it's got a 10 over crank. No, it doesn't have a 10 over crank. It has a 10 under crank. The reason they say it's undersized instead of oversized is because in order to fix this surface, they have to grind it down so it becomes smaller, meaning it's undersized. So how much they grind it determines if it's 10 under, 20 under, 30 under, and like I showed you earlier with the bearing, that's measured in thousandths of an inch. So a .030, you know, they could take this down to 30 and I could still use this crank, but I have to use the appropriate bearings. They'd have to be a .030 undersized bearing. Alright, so before we get to these cylinder heads, let's go ahead and talk about the camshaft I pulled out of there. We already saw that the cam bearings were totally wasted in this motor. And it's probably a good thing I pulled it apart when I did. I'm not sure how much longer it would have lasted. If we look at these cam lobes, they should be the same as the bearings. They should be clean like this. All the cam lobes should look like that. They shouldn't have any stripes on them or color discoloration like that. This one especially here, where my finger is, you can see this extra mark here. That's uneven wear and some goofiness going on here. You can totally see it on that cam lobe right there. That's bad. Those two lobes right there, you can really see a lot of wear. And you can tell that the gold areas are low spots where this cam is worn in and it went through the coating. This engine was, like I said, it seemed to run okay. It just had no power whatsoever. You just want it to be clean like this. These other ones, pretty bad. This one had a wasted bearing and you can see it's got some discoloration. That would be where it got hot. It's got lines in it. That's where dirt or something went through it. Same with this one here. That one here. And the front one, which was really messed up. You can see there's a big old giant line through it. That's all bad. So this cam is shot. Another way you can tell if it's worn out is by using a lifter. Now the side of the lifter should be straight. So what you can do to check your lobes for straightness, you stick that lifter on there, and if it's round and rocks back and forth, it's bad. Matter of fact, let's go back to these two first ones I showed you that were really bad. Yeah, these guys here. And let's look at those. All right. Let me spin it the other way here so we got a little play, little room to mess with it. So you can see there, that's not even close to flat. It's so bad. So yeah, that's one way you can check your cam lobes, see if they're rounded off. Another thing I found with these lifters is they're supposed to be perfectly flat on the bottom, and if you see that circle, I'm going to rotate it so it can pop up from time to time. See that circle right there? That's not a good sign. That's where the lifter is actually beginning to push in and wear out. A little more obvious on this one. I would show you a perfect one, but I don't have one. They all look like that. You're going to get a little bit of that, don't get me wrong. The lifter spins while it's in there, and it's going to get a little bit of rounding on it sometimes, but that was pretty bad. And this one's really bad. And another thing I noticed as I pulled them apart was 3 of the lifters were starting to fail. They were actually coming apart. They're supposed to look like this. They've got a strap on either side of them that holds that cup in. And on 3 of them, only one strap was holding it in. So this engine was pretty damn worn out now that I'm looking at it, and it's pretty amazing it ran as smooth as it did. Well, it ran smooth because it's worn out. But I'm glad I pulled it apart. I don't know how much longer this thing would have lasted. There's a whole bunch of points here that could have failed. The bearings were shot, lifters were shot, camshaft was wiped out. All the bearings, rods and mains, were shot. So cam bearings were wasted. I can't believe the thing was doing as good as it was. The timing chain was super loose. I can't believe it didn't skip a tooth. So I'm pretty impressed that it stayed together, quite honestly, but it's not looking good. Alright, so here's our oil pump out of the 360 Dodge van motor, and there's some schmutz in it. I picked it up, it was rattling, and I started banging it on the table, and that's what happened. That is metal, my friends. will prove it here in a second. Here we go. Just grab one of these guys. There's a magnet. Oh, never mind. It's bearing material. It's aluminum. Okay, anyway. Yeah, you can see it when you look at it real close. It's all metal. And a lot of it. Luckily, it all got picked up by this oil pump screen. Now, I'm going to go ahead and open this oil pump up and see what the gears look like inside of it. Alright, so I grabbed a feeler gauge, and it was tighter than 010. But you can see here, this thing's wasted. So we won't be reusing this pump at all. Would it still pump oil? Yeah. If I clean it out good enough, would it work? Yeah, it would. But it's just, I don't know, it's just no point in doing it. That's some pretty serious scarring on this thing. Scoring, I guess you should say. It's even got an extra wear on it right there, on that lobe. So yeah, this is pretty bad. That one really is bad. So, she's wasted. So that's one more thing we don't have to think about, is worrying about this. Let's see what the outside of this part looks like too. Yeah, that's pretty grubby. You can feel it. Really bad on the inside. It should be, right? It should match that other rotor. So, and it does. It's definitely got some, it's got some problems. It's got a lot of angst. Okay, so this motor's basically shot. It really needs to be gone through. We could do it on the cheap, just some bearings and some rings and try to make it run, but there's really no point. There's so many parts have to be replaced on it that it just doesn't justify the amount of effort, especially because getting it in and out of a van isn't easy. I don't have to take it out again in a couple of months or a year because I cheaped on something. So we're looking at a rebuild on this engine, replace it with another engine maybe, or something along those lines. So I got to do some homework online, see what parts are costing these days, see what other options I can come up with, and then figure out where to go from there. If you guys got any good suggestions, go ahead and put them down there in the comments. I'll keep an eye on them. And yeah, we're going to figure out what to do about this engine situation next, and then we'll go from there. So thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week, and take care of yourselves. Later.